All right. And good day, everyone, and welcome to today's session of Truly Foundation and A Course in Miracles with your host, Oliver Blue, your temporary teacher, your temporary guide, your temporary um, guru, if you want to say that or call me that. But what's the most importantly is what is most important is that I am your self that shares the one self that we all share with the one source, the one God, the one love, the one being that encompasses all and everything. And I am very, very excited. I am very grateful for the opportunity to share another workbook lessons out of the workbook for students section of A Course in Miracles, which is what we have chosen as a tool and a guide to help us on this journey of transformation, to help us with the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is peace here. It is what all of us desire. Peace is not just a feeling, and it's not just a sense, but true peace transcends the understanding of this world. True peace is uh, it it transcends any event, activity, feeling, sensation, event. It is not a happening, but peace is the very essential aspect of our nature, of our divine nature. Peace is the knowing that you are the holy home of God. Peace comes through the knowing that you are the innocent creation of the one innocent God. Peace is the knowing that all that God is a reflection of the very essence of God. And God can only create or love, because we know here we teach that love and God is synonymous. We don't get caught up in titles or words that we're using. We know that words are twice removed from the truth. But what is more important here is not the form or the word, but what is most important here is the content, the purpose, the meaning. And what we're all about here at Truly Foundation is sharing these advanced spiritual teachings so that all humanity can have a reference point, and to cause all humanity to turn within. And in order to turn within, you have to turn away from that which is without, and remind the mind of who it is. So this is a course in reminding. This is a course in forgiveness. This is a course in miracles. The miracle is our shift in the way we think, our shift in our perception, the meaning that we give ourselves, the meaning that we give each other, the meaning that we give to life, the meaning that we give to God. And so I'm happy to be a part of this experiment or experience, I guess you might say. Peace is knowing that all have been called and none have been denied. Peace is knowing that this bodily experience that we're having is not an eternal experience. It's a temporary experience, because that which is eternal it does not fade away, it does not decay, it does not cease to be as the body experience would tell us. But who we are in reality is beyond the body. Who we are in reality is what God created before the world was, before the foundation of the world, before there was any time or space. And so we identify our true self as that which is infinite, meaning having no beginning and no end, just like its source. We identify the real you as that which is impersonal, meaning that these personal selves with these personal timelines and personal history, with a government name and a number. This is not the real you. The real you is impersonal. In other words, we all share the one source, the one life, the one living substance. It doesn't belong to an individual, but it is the life that we all share. That there is a universal connection that cannot be broken in humanity. The real you is the fact that you have a consciousness and that you are aware of being conscious. And you are aware of a body. And you are aware of things, millions of things. But you're not those things. You're just aware of them. You've always been aware. You will always be aware, because the source of life is awareness itself, being aware of itself. The one thing that you are absolutely sure of is that you exist, that I am. In other words, I am conscious. I am aware. I'm sure of that. I have no doubt about that. And if you're listening to me, you are sure that you are. I am that. You are that. You are awareness. And that awareness that you are aware of is the aspect of you that is God. Because God is consciousness. God is awareness. God is light. God is like illumination. God is luminosity. God illuminates. God brings light. God brings awareness. See, God brings consciousness. Without that, that which we are aware of does not exist. Because it comes out of our awareness, out of our consciousness. So that means that consciousness and awareness is the source of everything. It is what allows life to have its dance and its play. Without it, there is no awareness. See, without awareness, there is nothing else. Without God, there is nothing else. That's why we say here that God is, and there is nothing else. And everything that is all encompassing in the one thing that we call God, or the one thing we call love, or the one thing that we call reality. And in this section, remember, we started this section by discussing the term Christ and what that means. What is Christ? And just for a brief reminder, I'm just going to read the first paragraph. Because this word Christ really is an all-encompassing word, right, that is used. to symbolize the oneness that we all share. His name is not a name given to one incarnate person, one body, one person who embodied a life experience. But this word is used as an all-encompassing word to remind us that there is but the one. That God has, and even Scripture uses the word in that manner when it says that God has reconciled all things back into the one thing, and he calls that one thing to Christ. Paul said it in his writings that it is the mystery. So, okay, don't get hung up on the word, but it is the mystery that was not understood. It was the mystery that was not unveiled to those of old, to those of ancient. But when Paul got a revelation of what Jesus's representation really meant, he said it many times. He said this was the mystery held back, but now has been made revealed to all of us, that Christ is not the Christ, or the ideal of oneness is in us or is us. That's what Christ means. That all things are now the one thing. All of us have this one source, this one self that we share, even though this world appears to us to give us a multitude of manifestations, a multitude of people, multitude of different forms, to be a misleading appearance that all things are separate and all things are divided, and all things have their separate interests. That's what, just from the natural view of this world, that's the conclusion that you would come to. But when we embrace and understand the mind of God and the nature of God, we come to understand that all things are the one thing. And just, of course, uses the terminology Christ to represent that. Paul, in many cases, uses the word Christ to represent that which have been reconciled back unto God. And not necessarily a reference to one person, even though there is but one person, but all of us are in Christ. See, that's the whole idea. All of us are in Christ. Jesus was just the first human to fully embrace this reality, to fully understand it, and to fully live it out. And so he becomes the elder statesman. He becomes the elder brother to all of us. He becomes the way shower. He becomes the example that we follow. But we're not to see ourselves as inferior to Jesus. We're not to see ourselves as inferior to God, because in God, in Christ, there is no inferiority. There's only equality. There's only oneness. And that's the big pill that we don't seem to be able to get down. We want to put the helpers, we want to put the symbol that Jesus represented on a pedestal and worship it. And that was not the case. We want to make a religion out of it. That was not the intent. The intent was for you to come to know yourself as the Christ too. To come to know yourself as the Christ. Yes, you. Yes, the holy you, the innocent you, the eternal, infinite you. Yes, the divine you. Yes, that you that God knew, that God said existed before you were formed in your mother's womb. That is the real you that loves you. And so what is the Christ? Christ is God's creation, and you are God's creation. Not the creation as we made it, but it's the creation as God created it. So Christ is God's creation as God created his creation. And he called him the creation himself, or the I am. And you and I are that, and all humanity are that. And that's an unchangeable creation. That is an unalterable creation. That which God creates can't be changed, can't be altered. But we think that change and alteration is common and normal. No, it's not. That's only in a perceptual world. But in the world of reality, in the world of perfection, in the world of truth, which is our home, there is no change. There is no alteration. All things are perfect as they are. So you are perfect as you are, not in your body self, not in your personal self, but in your real self, your true essence, the foundation, the essence of who you are, which is love and peace and joy and happiness and fulfillment and infinitude. That is your complete and whole and perfect self. And so Christ is God's creation. We are God's creation as God created us. That's basically what Christ means. It's just that simple. It's not complicated. It's not about a religion. It's not about one specific person, as we would want to make it that, to promote separation, to promote levels and superiority and inferiority and competition. All that comes out of we're trying to make of what God created something that is not. We are the one self that God created. And these multitudes of expressions of that one self they don't divide us. They actually unite us. Because it puts on the display the absolute extraordinary creativity and infinite expression of love. It says that Christ is the self that we share. See, that's what it says here. You are the Christ, and it's and not you as an individual, but you as being a part of this one creation of God. It says here that you are the self, the being that we share, uniting us with one another. We're not divided. As you see, the world plays out division and separation. That is not reality. That is an illusion. That's a false representation appearing in this three-dimensional that is only temporal also, that is only limited also. This world is not a reflection of the true nature of who we are. This world is not a reflection of God, but it's a reflection of the belief in separation that we made to be an attack on God or to be an attack on reality of truth. And so Christ is the self that we share, uniting us with one another and with God as well. So see, there is only one entity. There is only one source. There is only one creator and only one creation. And we, I, you, not as an individual self, but as a reflection of the one self that we share, are all a part of that. There is no separation between us. There is no separation in our reality. This world gives the appearance that there's separation among us, but there's no separation in us or as us. That which the world puts on display as separation among us is a false presentation or representation of our true reality. You cannot look at that and come to a conclusion of truth. No, you can only look past that and see the reality of the oneness that we share. That happens when your eyes are open. That happens when you remove the veil. That happens when you recognize. It's a recognition only. It's not something that you do. It's not something that you earn. It's not something that you can buy. It's not something that has specialness on it. where it's for one or for another, for a group or for this or for that. No, it is what it is. It merely is. And when we merely recognize, and this recognition comes through the knowledge or the knowing of God or the knowing of the self. When we recognize that, in that moment, we are enlightened. In that moment, we are awakened. In that moment, we are born anew. And that simply means now we see from the eyes of God. Now we see from the only reality that there is, that God is, and there is nothing else. And because God is, therefore we are, or I am. That's why it is so natural and so defining that you say and repeat that phrase more than any other phrase that you've ever mentioned in your life, and that is, I am. But when we're not aware of what I am, we have the tendency to make up something that is not in alignment or in integrity with who we are. See, we cannot define ourselves. Only the Creator can determine the value. Only the Creator can determine the value, the purpose, the function of what one creates, because ideas do not leave their source, and all of us are an idea of God. You are a God idea. I am a God idea. All humanity is. But when we're not aware of that, our propensity is to create or to make an idea about ourselves, or to hold a self-image about ourselves that is not true, that is not in alignment, that is not in integrity, that is not in harmony with our true self. And when we're not in harmony, and when we're not in alignment, and when we're not in integrity, we put purposes on ourselves. We put ideas within ourselves that creates suffering and pain, that creates confusion, that creates anxiety and fear and guilt and sin consciousness. That's where it comes from. It only comes from being misaligned in our thinking, not being in integrity with what God has created us to be. God said, I am your creator, and I know the thoughts that I hold towards you. Thoughts only for you to live the life of abundance, to live life and to live it more abundantly. Because life wants to live itself in and through you abundantly. Not just abundantly, but as Paul picked up on it in Ephesians, he said, exceeding abundant, exceeding abundance, that which exceeds our imagination, that what can exceed what we could even dream of. He said, exceeding abundantly above all that we could imagine, all that we could ask, and all that we could think with the natural mind. That's how much life wants to live itself as us, fully expressing itself. So all of those desires that are in your heart, all of the dreams and the visions, all of those aspirations that you may have, and think that you could never, ever have that experience. You can. And it happens as we allow the truth that is true always about us. And it starts with our identification. That's why identification is so vital. We have experienced what we have identified ourselves to be. Every experience in your life, where you are now, your status in life, your mental capacity, your psychological status, your physical well-being, all of this, where you have experience and what you are and where you are right now is a direct result of what you have thought yourself to be. So if you sense separation, so if you sense limitation, so if you sense a lack of oneness, if you sense a lack of resources, if you have a sense of scarcity in your thinking, if you have a sense of loss, if you have this sense of fear, if you have this sense of being inferior, it is not coming from your true self. It is coming from a self that you made with ideas that are not in integrity with the truth of who you are. It's not in integrity. It's not in harmony with what God created. Like he said here, it is the self that we share, uniting with one another and with God as well. The self that God created. That's the Christ. And it's not that we call it the Christ. We could call it, that is the spoon. It doesn't matter what we call it. The spoon is just a form. In and of itself is nothing. But what the spoon represents, what the nature of the spoon is, and what the capacity of the spoon, and what the capabilities of the spoon, that's what the true value is. That is what the true value is. So we get caught up in words. We get caught up in these physical appearances. We get caught up in the color of skin. We get caught up in the gender of the body. We get caught up with who people love and how they love them. We get caught up in what nation are you from? What side of town are you from? We get caught up in what team do you cheer for? What church do you go to? What is your spiritual path? We get caught up in, what race you was born in and the history that goes with it. We get caught up in what nation, what state, what political party, we, all of these things, these labels that we have made, they only seek to divide us. We get caught up in that. And we put the value in that, and we extract the value or the meaning. Or the goodwill. We extract that out. We get so fixed on the form, we can't look past the form. And then we base all of our thinking and all of our interpretation and all of our feelings, and we base all of our understanding, all of our perceptions. We form all of our opinions based on the form. And we miss it by a mile. And then we wonder, why are things so complex and difficult? When God has made them so simple. Why did we do that? And so Christ is the thought. See, we want to when we think of the word Christ, we immediately go to one particular body, one particular person's incarnation, which is very limited. And you immediately go there. And so we're missing the point. We miss the point. We can't see past the form. We can't see past our religion. We can't see past our political party. We can't see past, all of these, again, categories that we have categorized people to divide ourselves. That's elementary. That's childish. But when we become mature and begin to see through the eyes of God, see through the eyes of oneness, and understand and recognize who we are in truth, then we see as God sees. We understand as God understands. And now we become very usable. We become ambassadors to promote the oneness that we share, to promote the love that we are, to promote the reality that is unchangeable, that is unalterable. And so it's no longer about the form. It's no longer about the denomination or the religion or the government or the schools or all of these things that we make as differences. It's no longer about that. It's only about the awakening of all humanity. Our life take on a whole new purpose, a whole new meaning. Why? Because we have now aligned ourselves with the purpose and the one will of God, which is our will also. Because it is the will of God that speaks to our outcome that we desire. It is God's will that speaks to our happiness. It is God's will that speaks to our joy and our peace and our fulfillment. It is God's will that speaks to the abundant life that we all desire. And so we're no longer fussing and fighting. We're no longer self-sabotaging ourselves by trying to break ourselves up against the law of love. But we have become one with love. We have become one with each other. We have become this oneness that fills all places and spaces. We become part of this living substance. And it is everywhere. There's no place that the glory or the splendor, there's no place where the presence of God is not, the presence of love is not. And there's no place where your presence is not, because you're one with that presence. Now that we have removed the blocks to the awareness that love is present everywhere, and you are included. That kind of thinking will solve all the problems of war and fighting. That kind of thinking will solve all the wars of inequality and this idea of superiority. This way of thinking will solve the problem of inferiority. This way of thinking will solve the problem of sin consciousness, guilt, and fear. This kind of thinking, the thoughts of God, will answer everything. And it has the ability to take the most diabolical situation, the most challenging situations in our life. It has the ability to take the most challenging situation in our life, the most misunderstood ideas in our life. It has the capacity to answer everything. Love answereth all things. God's love. It solves all things. It puts all things back into alignment. God's love, it's all there is. And this love that God is what created us, what created you and all humanity. And so Christ is the thought which still abides within the mind, the one mind that is our source. That is God's source. Christ has not left its holy home, nor lost the innocence in which he was created. You have not lost your innocence. You have not lost your place, your position. You have not lost your reality. You have not lost the dignity. You have not lost the glory and the honor in which God crowned you with in creation. You have lost anything. All that God gave you in creation, you have lost none. Nothing in this world, no experience that you can have can separate you from that love, can separate you from that innocence. You have not lost anything. You are everything. You remain as God created you. Holy or whole and complete. That's all. That's what that means. It's whole and complete. You are whole and complete. You are just as whole and complete as God is. And all of the things that you have experienced that appear to have broken you into pieces, that has appeared to redefine you, none of those things have altered your reality. Those are just experiences that you have chosen and you have had. But the good news is you can choose again. You can choose. I can choose to realign ourselves. We can choose to come into integrity. We can choose to come into harmony with the truth of who we are, which here at Truly Foundation we call the real you. That loves you. Why? Because the real you is love. The real you is love. You've all heard the story of the prodigal son. You've all heard the story of Adam and Eve. Those are just symbols. Those are just teachable moments to teach you. See, we get caught up in the form. Was Adam black? Was he white? Was Eve black and white? Where were they? The prodigal son. Da 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 da. We get all caught up into that. The mind, ego thing. But the simplicity of those symbols is this. They both chose to go on a journey, to detour from their safety, to detour from their endless resource, to detour from their oneness, to detour from their place of honor. They chose to do that, and the Father didn't stop neither one. Likewise, your life, the life that you've experienced up until now, that was your choice, and the Father won't stop you. But the Father knows that there is no place outside of Him. There is no place outside of God. There is no peace outside of God. There's no real happiness and joy and fulfillment outside of God. There's no contentment outside of God. Why? Because there's nothing outside of God. And so just like the prodigal son and just like Adam and Eve made a choice to let's experience, to see what it would be like to be away from our source, away from our Father. Let's see what we can make of it. And the Father allows them to fall asleep and dream of separation. Because in reality, you cannot separate from your source. In reality, you can't leave God. And so the story goes that they both end up in ruins. Adam and Eve ended up in ruins. I mean, their first experiment with having children was a disaster. One murdered the other. See, it just snowballed from there. And the story of the prodigal son. The son said, I want my inheritance and I want it now, not knowing that he already had his inheritance. He was thinking the inheritance was only money, only riches. No, that's just an aspect of it. And so he got misaligned, out of harmony, out of balance. He thought the money was his inheritance, like we do. We think our possessions are our inheritance. No, our possessions are only a reflection of what we've done with our inheritance. But our inheritance are not in things. Our inheritance is in our knowing of the oneness that we share. That's your inheritance. That to know that we are, our source is endless, to know that our life is endless, to know that there's only the one and we're safe. And so the prodigal son went on his journey and ended up in ruins. Adam and Eve left Eden, which was just symbolic of the one life that God shared with all his creation. Just a symbol of that. Don't get caught up in the story. Like I said, don't get caught up in the form and you miss the awareness that the form represents. The awareness of what the form represents is more important than the form. The chicken is more important than the eggs that it produced. Why? Because without the chicken, it can produce no eggs. You get all caught up in the eggs. The money, the fame, the fortune, we think, oh, this is it. No, this ain't it. What is it is you. You are the prize. You are the source. You are the source of the life that you experience. All your ideas that you accepted, that you wanted to experience, you experienced them. Whether you take responsibility for that or not, that's still the truth. Every single solitary experience that you've had, it's a choice that you've made. All of us. At some level, you've made that choice. But the good news is we can choose again. Based on what? Based on the truth, based on reality. And so both of those stories are just symbols where wisdom is trying to teach us that there is nothing outside of God. That's the message. There is nothing outside of God. There's nothing eternal, nothing lasting, nothing sustainable outside of God. The only sustainability is God. God is our very life. And if we know that God is the source and God is our very life, and we're a part of that God, not as something separate from us, but as something that's one with us, then we have a heart of gratitude. We choose to relate and to fellowship with that awareness of our oneness with our Creator. And so we're grateful. We sing this song. Our hearts go out to this reality, and that reality comes back to us. We're grateful for it all. We're in a state of thanksgiving. We're always in a state of appreciation. Yes. And so this Christ, he has not left his holy home. You have not left your holy home. You cannot. You always and will always be in the heart of God. You may fall asleep and dream of other experiences, but in reality, when you wake up, you're going to wake up right where you've always been, in the heart of God. You've always been there. The most vile person that you could think of, the person that you think is the most vile human because of the acts of unloving acts that they have performed against themselves and against others. That person, not their acts, not their dreams of destruction, but they are a part of the one self that you and I share. It's just that they're asleep, dreaming of separation, dreaming of being a dictator or a killer, or dreaming of the things that happen. It's like an actor in a movie. They're playing a role. And that role is not in harmony with love, but that's a choice they made. What choice are you making? That's what's most important. That's what you can control. That's what you can impact, the choice that you're making. You can only choose for yourself. You can't choose for others. Others can only choose for themselves. They can't choose for you. That is good news. That's why in the midst of a world that appears to be so unloving, it appears to to be running out of answers, to appear to be running out of resources. That's why you can be in the midst of this. You can look on devastation. You can look on inequality. You can look on all of the unrighteous acts that get acted out on this plane. You can look, you can be in the midst of it. 10,000 could be falling at your side. You can look at all of it and know that it doesn't come nigh you. Why? Because you look past the appearances and see the real world. You look past the falsity and remind your mind of what is real and what is true. And therefore you can maintain your peace in the midst of any situation, any circumstance, any relationship, any hardship. You can rise above it. Why? Because it is not the real deal. You are. It is changing and fleeting all the time. But you, in reality, is the only stability in this world. You are the light of this world. That's why Jesus called you the light. You're the only stability. Everything else is unstable. The real you, of course. The false self is just as unstable as everything else in the world. But we have what? We have turned away from our false self and turned within. Therein lies our peace, our stability, our sustainability, our happiness, our joy. So you have not left your holy home, nor have you lost the innocence in which Christ was created. You have not lost your innocence. You have not. You have not lost your sinlessness. You have not. Living and experiencing a dream of sin and guilt and fear cannot alter your reality. It's just a bad dream. It's a bad nightmare. That's full of feelings and emotions that support it. But all that can be transcended when you recognize who you are and wake up from that dream. And so, he has not lost his holy home, nor lost his innocence in which he was created. The Christ that you are, the Christ that I am, the Christ that all humanity is, which is the symbol of oneness, abides unchanged forever. How long does Christ, the idea of Christ, the revelation of Christ abides unchanged? It abides unchanged forever. In what? The mind of God. In the one mind. And that's in the mind of God. So you are the changeless one. You are the sinless one. You are the innocent one. Yes, you are. You've always been that. You will always be that. And so when you are aware of this, you now experience life in the liberty and the freedom of your innocence, your wholeness, your completeness, your oneness with all humanity and all living things. So therefore you hold no prejudgments. You hold none. Why? Why would you judge yourself? You hold no grievances. Why would you grieve yourself? Because you understand it's only the one. And so what you would have for another, you are going to have for yourself, because there's only the one self that we share. So why would you think scarcity when we are all abundant? Why would you think competition? There's nothing to compete. Why would you compete against yourself? But you know, this whole world order is based on competition, the outdoing, the separation, the division. So one can have power, one could conquer, one can have control over another. That is not life. That is not living. That's not peace. That is antithetical to love. When you wake up, you realize I don't compete at all. But what I do is I create out of that which is already created. I create out of this ocean of love, out of this endless, boundless resource of living life, of living stuff, of living things. Where there is no scarcity, there is no sense of loss, but there's only this infinite, there's only this boundless, there's only this tremendous, endless life where we live and where we move and where we have our being or share our being. And now my mind has been renewed. Now my mind has been transformed. And I no longer think with an ego mind. I no longer think with the mind that was conditioned by this world. But I think with the only mind that there is, and that is the mind of God. And so it becomes easy now for me to say that I and my Creator are one and the same. I and my Father are one. My Father hears me. My Father loves me. My Father sustains me. And not only me, but all creation. There is no specialness in God. There's no special people, no special country, no special nation, no special religions. There's no special teams. All of these ideas that we make up, like God is showing favor towards one and not towards the other. That's the God that we made. That's the sky God that we made. That's the separated God that we made. We made up in our mind because of guilt and sin consciousness and fear. But the God of love that breathes all of us, the God, the merciful God that has mercy towards all of us, shows no specialness, no favoritism, shows no shows absolutely no indifferences. The God of love reigns on everyone the same. The God of love gives all of us the same capacities, the same mental faculties, the same sensual system, the same amount of time in what we call a day. God is an equal opportunity reality. It takes nothing from the idea of separation, but it is everything from the reality of oneness, and that we all share in that oneness equally. And that when the mind is transformed and renewed to this reality, which is first order, that is the first order of business in your life, is to wake up to the reality of your true identity. Because therein will all of your decisions be made based on your perception of yourself. And so when your self-image is aligned with what God created, you will sparkle, you will shine, you will glow, you will know, You will share. You will give. You will create. You will be a reflection of your true essence, of your true nature. You'll be a reflection, like you said, an express image of the one love that we all share, the one God that we all share. I can't make this any more simple. That is the first order of business, knowing that you are indeed. You're not the Christ, you're not a Christ, but you're just Christ. You're just oneness. That's what you are. You hold no lower or higher position over anyone. God holds no lower or higher position over anyone. Jesus holds no higher position, a lower position over anyone. Nor does Buddha, nor does any other ascended master, nor does any other enlightened person or unenlightened person. But we have to choose today and in every moment of the day to be or not to be. To be our true big S self that we share, which is the Christ self, or do we fall asleep and dream of being something else? And with that comes all the suffering and the pain. And the hopelessness. Who do you choose today? What do you choose today? How do you choose for this day, this moment, this instant? Simply saying yes to my Creator. Yes, I am that. When you say yes, what you're saying is, yes, Father, I am that. I am. I am that which you created. I remain as you created me. I am the holy home of God. I'm united with everyone and everything. And with you as well. Your thought remains with me, which is my one source. I have not lost my innocence. Paul picked up on this in Ephesians chapter 1 when he says, before the foundation of the world, it was already predetermined that I would be holy and blameless or innocent. I will be holy and without blame before you. This is love. I will be the Christ. I'm a part of this one entity. I have no inferiority complex because I'm not inferior to anyone or anything. I have no superiority complex because I'm not superior to anyone or to anything. But in equality, where love abides, because where there is no equality, there is no love. And y'all know what I mean. And so he was created. You are a creation of God. God calls, and we're just using a word to identify that and to say all the creation of God, we're going to put it all on the one label. We call it Christ. That's what the course is using. That's what the Bible uses. Other spiritual paths uses other terms, and it doesn't make them any different. It's just another term. Words are just, what we choose to give value to. So it doesn't matter what you call it. Don't get so caught up in that it doesn't sound like your languaging or your word. You know whether someone is loving or not. That's what's all more important. No matter what country they're from, what race they're from, what side of track they're from, love. You feel love. You identify with love when you're walking in love. And so who we are remains unchanged forever in the mind of our Creator. Now, all that was a preference, or was a preface. All that was an introduction to the lesson that I was supposed to be sharing on today. But this is what was in my heart. So come back on tomorrow. If you were expecting to hear me give commentary on Workbook Lesson 275, God's healing voice protects all things today. So what I just shared with you, I would say that's God's healing voice, because what I shared has all the healing elements in it. It has all the corrective properties within it to make the proper correction to our thinking, to make the proper correction that creates the miracle that calls true perception in all of us, in any of us. So tomorrow, we will get into Workbook Lesson 275, God's healing voice protects all things today. What voice are we hearing? What voice are we listening to? Are we listening to the voice that speaks for God, that speaks for love, that speaks for oneness, right? Or are we listening to the voice of the ego? Ego is no more than a false idea about who we are, about our identity. Like I said, everything starts with identity. And when the identity is in alignment, joy and peace. When the identity is misaligned, sin consciousness, guilt, and fear. Limitations, loss, scarcity. So this is a course in mind training, which is the miracle. When we shift our thinking, when we shift our hearing to hear but the voice that speaks for God, which is within all of us. I introduce myself as your temporary host, your temporary guide, only because I know that the permanent one is you. The permanent one resides as you. But are we listening to the big S self? Are we listening to that whole spirit, or they call the Holy Spirit? Are we listening to God? Or are we listening to all the sounds and sights of this world, which is all designed to distract us and to redefine us and to divide us? Who are you listening to? The voice of God heals. The voice of the ego, it seeks to destroy, to divide. Which voice? And not some audible voice I'm talking about. The voice of God is soundless. The voice of God is intuitive. It's an awareness that transcends the sounds and the sights of this world. It's stillness and quietness. In stillness and quietness. When all the raucous shrieking is silenced. That's why it's so important for us to have quiet time, meditation. And you don't have to go off and do any form. You can meditate when you're driving down the road. You can meditate, in any environment. It's a practice. It's a discipline. When you know your source, when you know the voice that speaks for God, you can hear it in an instant. It generally doesn't speak first. It generally does not speak first, and it generally does not speak the loudest. That's the ego. That is the false self. But God's voice is a gentle, inspiring, intuitive awareness that we align ourselves with. And the more we align ourselves and the more we practice walking in this voice, which is the voice of love, which is the voice of forgiveness, which is the voice of peace, the more familiar we become to walk in harmony and in step with the voice. Becomes our way of life. Thank you so much. Again, we'll be back tomorrow to get into workbook lesson 275. But in the meantime, and in between time, you have this day to be joyful for. You have this day to be grateful and thankful and appreciative for. And so from a place of appreciation and from a place of thanksgiving, that we not only share with each other, but we share with our Creator. We share with all of life. We are happy and grateful now that we get to rest in this place, in this peace, in this tranquility that is ours, to rest in this abundance that is ours, to rest in this knowing that is ours. And for that, we're grateful. And with that, I'm going to sign off. Thank you so much for listening in. And we'll be back on tomorrow. Bye-bye.